My name is Sarah Bowen. I'm the artist behind Tiny Things by Bowen here in Tulsa, and I'm really excited that you're here today with me to do some de-stress doodling. The only materials that you'll need today are a piece of paper. I like using a little piece like this because it's a lot less to fill up. I like using a little index card. If you don't have an index card, you could also take a piece of printer paper, fold it in half again, and have a page roughly the same size to work with. You're also going to need a colored pencil. You can use a regular pencil if you don't have a colored pencil around, but if you do, just pick a color that you really like or you enjoy and we'll go with that. So you can see from the examples up here, even though they're far away, don't worry, I'll show you up close in a minute, but you can tell that they're really busy. There's a lot of white space filled in. We're going to be creating something that's really interesting to the eye as we work. And we're just kind of going to go with the flow. Don't set any expectations for this class. Don't decide, I'm going to make a masterpiece, it's going to be great. Maybe just focus on relaxing, settling in. Take note right now of how you're feeling, maybe where you're holding tension. I tend to hold mine in my shoulders. Maybe I feel a little scrunched up. So see how you feel. And we're going to be using a form of mindful breathing while we work. So I want to show you my favorite form of that is called belly breathing. And what we're going to do is take one hand, put it on your stomach, sit up nice and straight, and we're going to take a big breath in through our nose and let it out through our mouth. So see what you feel when you do that. In through your nose, out through your mouth. Were you able to feel your hand move with your stomach when your lungs expand with air and push out? That's what we're aiming for. We want to be really aware of how deeply we're breathing, because the deeper the better. It's going to help regulate our heart rate, cool us down, and just kind of make us feel nice. So let's do 2 more together. Hand on your tummy, sit up straight. Big breath in through your nose, out through your mouth. Check in with your shoulders, make sure they're not scrunched. Next breath in, extra sniff. Now let it out, maybe sigh. Check in with your shoulders, maybe give them a little wiggle, maybe do a little side to side with your neck. Now check in. Do you feel maybe a little bit more relaxed? Maybe a little bit less stressed? Maybe you have felt your heart rate go down? Let's see how it goes as we work on this project. So I'm going to switch you over to my close-up camera here and give you an idea of what we're going to be doing. All right, so we'll check out some of these examples here. Notice how everything here has been made with a pretty basic shape or element. So triangles, circles, hearts, swirls. Everybody is capable of making those shapes. And the more that you play around with the shading using darks and lights with that one color, the more interesting it's going to be. These are all different, they're all unique. Don't worry about making yours look just like mine or just like anyone else's. But the way we're going to start is by doing this border right around the outside, and as we do it, we're going to do some of that belly breathing. So you're going to take a big breath in through your nose with me, and as you let it out, we'll draw that first line around the border. Big breath. Let it out slowly, don't rush it. Excellent. Another big breath in, check in with your shoulders. Let it out, draw your line. Maybe your line is not perfect. Maybe it's got some wiggle in it like mine. That's okay. Don't worry about perfection. Next line, big inhale. Let it out. If you want to give a good sigh, go for it. Nobody's judging. Awesome. Here's our last one. Let's make it the biggest breath we take all day. Let's do 2 extra sniffs. In through your nose. Extra sniff. Extra sniff. All right, let it out. Relax your body. Awesome. The next step is going to be putting a swirl through your page. It can cross over itself, like right here, but don't cross your border. You can touch it, but don't pass it. And just go with the flow. Don't worry about making yours look the same. Mine turn out different every single time. I never make a plan. It just comes out the way it comes out. And what we've done is we've gone in and made separate little spaces to put in some designs or some artistic elements. So mine has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I have 8 different spaces to work with. Maybe you have more, maybe you have less. If you only have like 5 and you want to add some more, just choose anywhere in there, put a little curvy line to cut through some of your spaces to create more. Let's start with a really basic shape. It's a circle. So choose any of your spaces. You can start wherever you want and add in some circles. So when we do this, it's nice to do a variety of sizes. Little ones, big ones. I like to do little parts of ones where the line would cut them in half. Our eyes can imagine where they would go from there. Just kind of go with the flow. That's kind of the moral of this lesson, I think. All right, so from here, let's turn our circles into something. Go with whatever you think of first. My first thought was buttons. I've never done buttons before. Let me show you some of the things we've done in the past. Bubbles are a really fun one to play around with that value, to add shading, kind of darken the underside, add a little bright highlight. This one, I turned the circles into planets, made a little solar system. We got bubbles again. You can see the really lightly shaded circles in the background to add some more to that, fill in some of that negative space. So whatever you want to go with, maybe it's cookies or pizzas, whatever, just go ahead and add that detail. I think I am going to go with buttons. Put a little border on the button, color in the little holes. Take your time. Mine are kind of turning out to look like pizzas anyway. They just have 4 perfect little pepperonis on them. Sometimes you get partway through something and you decide, oh, this looks like something else, and you can just go with it. That's kind of the cool thing about not having any expectations and not really worrying so much about the final product. Just kind of have some fun with doodling. So I've got my detail in all of them, but so far this circle space is made almost entirely of negative space. That means I've just got some lines in there, but most of it's white. Our negative space is our paper color. And the more we can color in, the more interesting it's going to be. There's a lot of ways we could do that. Maybe we color in the buttons themselves or whatever your object is. I think I'm going to color in the background. And I'm going to use my value and shading to color the whole background and do like a ombre effect. So we think of ombre as like one color slowly becoming the other color. And when you're only working with one color, you have to think of your negative space or your paper as that secondary color. So I'm fading from blue to white. And I like to do a little beginning color and then go back in and darken up. You can always go darker, but you can't go lighter. So whatever you're doing in your space, see how you can fill in some of that white. And ombre is just kind of a pleasant thing, or gradient is a pleasant thing to our eyes. All right, let's pick another really basic shape. Let's do a square. If you already were like, oh, I'm going with triangles, then just go with it. This can be as self-paced as you want it to be. We all have our own ideas and they're all probably pretty great. So I've got a bunch of squares. My space was kind of a funny shape, so I got a bunch of like half squares. What are some thoughts on what to turn squares into? I have this one I've done in the past. We turned those into books. Let's see, this one we made our squares into 3D cubes and turned them into dice. This one we turned our squares into stubby little semi-trucks. So whatever came to mind, whatever you want to turn your squares into, go for it. I think since I'm working with blue, it's kind of reminded me of ice cubes. So I'm just going to go ahead and make mine 3D by adding these lines that go back from one side at an angle, the same angle from the top, and then just cap it off back there. So I think maybe to make them look like ice cubes, I'm going to shade the boxes themselves. Sometimes our colors kind of inspire what we think of when we see the shape. So I've got all these little ice cubes going all these different directions. Maybe I'll put a little one back here, fill in a little bit more of that space. And then I think I'll lightly shade each one. So I'm using that light value, I'm not pressing down too hard. That's why colored pencils are so great. You have so many shades to play with while you work. You know what? There's the end of that square. So I've gone over each one, and then I think I'll just kind of darken up the bottoms of them, no matter which way they're going. Kind of fill that in. Maybe you've thought of something clever to put in the background. It doesn't have to be shading. It could be more objects. Maybe, I don't know, I can't think of a great example right now, but if you have a square that you've turned into something that has a logical background objects to stick in there, go for it. I think maybe I'll do some really light squares just to imply some ice cubes off in the distance. All right, so most of my negative space is taken up there. I'm pretty happy with that one. Let's move on. Let's do, honestly, this one's my favorite shape to do because there's so many food related items we could turn it into. Let's do some triangles. Again, make sure you vary your sizes. Having them all one size is a little bit boring to our eyes. And the variety of sizes kind of implies depth, like maybe the big ones are up close to you, the little ones are further away. Ooh, those kind of lined up on accident. Never know what you're going to end up with. All right, so what kind of ideas do you have for your triangles? You may have noticed in this past one, we did ice cream cones. That's a great one. That's what I was talking about, where it makes sense to just kind of put some sprinkles back there in the background of this one. This is probably my favorite thing I've ever turned triangles into, is paper planes. And this one actually just plays around with more of that triangle shape. So if you're ever at a loss for what to turn something into, just do a little geometric patterning inside and it'll look really interesting. I think I'm gonna make mine, since I like making them food items, I'm gonna turn mine into little tortilla chips. Adding that texture with little dots, like so. I'm not sure if you'll be able to hear on the recording or not, but it is raining pretty hard outside. Whatever you're working on right now, whatever you're turning your triangles or whatever shape you're doing into, take a moment, take a really big, deep belly breath and see, what do you hear? One of my favorite sounds is the sound of pencil on paper. So I can hear that. I can hear the rain outside. I can hear birds outside. You can become aware of your own breathing. Sometimes if you're feeling stressed and you're looking to calm yourself down a little bit, a really good way to do that is to check in with your senses. So sometimes when we get really upset, we keep thinking about the same thing over and over again, and it's hard to get our brain off of that track. A really easy way to do it is to check in. What do you hear? Maybe what do you see? Maybe what do you smell? And thinking about these sensory things can help us stop our mind from racing. So in the background of my Doritos here, I've just, yeah, that's right, I'm calling them Doritos, not tortilla chips. This is the cheesy dust that falls out of the bag when you're munching on them. That's what I imagine. So whatever you've done, make sure you've added some value, some shading, filled in some of that white space. And let's do one more basic shape or element before we move on to maybe some lines or some patterns. And I'm gonna go with a diamond for this one. Maybe you wanna do hearts or stars, whatever you want, go for it. I'm gonna go with diamonds. And sometimes when I say diamonds, people think of drawing them with the triangle with the flat top to make them look like the kind of diamond you wear on a ring. If that's what you thought of, go for it. No one is here to judge your art. So what ideas do you have to turn your diamonds or whatever shape you're working on into? Whatever just kind of comes to mind, go with it. For me, the thing that came to mind with this style of diamond was some kites. I like doing kites because the tails can fill in that negative space in a really interesting way. You can have them coming in from the side. I almost always use a dark value when I'm drawing the shapes themselves. I'm usually pressing down pretty hard, but you can play around with drawing really lightly, so it's just the faintest whisper of the shape. So I look at that, I think, oh, that's pretty good, but again, I don't have any value or shading in there. I think I'm gonna do the background and maybe see if I can leave some white space to kind of imply clouds. That's kind of what I was inspired by when I saw the kites. So I didn't have a plan. I hope you didn't have a plan and you're just kind of going with it. Alrighty. So I can see my clouds in there. Maybe you cannot, but that is okay. So I want to show you one of my favorite ways to fill in a space, and that is by doing a tree, drawing a little tree in there. Like, here's one. Let's see, here's a tiny one. It's a really great way to fill in kind of an oddly shaped space if you have one. So if you would like to do a tree with me, choose one of your spaces and start out with a trunk. I'm going to do a nice dark value. I'm really pressing down as hard as I can without breaking my pencil. I'm just going to have it go right up into that next space. You can see how mine wraps around this circle here. So I'm going to be using all of this space to fill in for a tree. So from your trunk, let's add branches. Again, that's pretty thick. I'm going back and forth and pressing down hard. Maybe yours is like this one, where it's all very clearly attached to the trunk. For me, I'm gonna have to just kind of imagine where it goes and have my branches coming out from behind this other shape. Let's have one go here, maybe one kind of low. So from here, let's add some sticks to our branches. So still pressing down fairly hard, going in all the different directions. Maybe I'll have a couple sticking out of here too. You can go up and touch the borders of your space if you want to. Every tree is going to look different, just like real life trees. Maybe have a little stick over here. And then from here, let's play around with our really light value to add some little twigs onto those sticks. So I'm pressing really lightly and making thin little lines going off in all the different directions to kind of fill in some of this space. And right now this is a silhouette. And silhouette art is really fun because you can go in and add just the idea of something. So I could go right here, color in a little oval like so, and we're all going to interpret that differently. Maybe, in my mind, it's an owl, but maybe you thought it was some other kind of bird, or an acorn, or an apple, or whatever, however your imagination took you. Maybe you want to put a silhouette of a little squirrel in the tree. Maybe you want to add a bird's nest. Whatever you want to do, make a little more interesting things in that tree. And then if you'd like to turn it into something more than a silhouette, if you'd like to add leaves, just add some fluffy lines around the outside. I like to add some right in the middle as well because there's lots of layers to the leaves in the trees. If you ever find yourself drawing really quickly while you're doing this, take a minute to just slow down a little bit. Maybe take a nice big deep breath. All right, so if you have a extra bit of space in your tree area, maybe you want to fill it in with a little background. Maybe I'll put a little hill back here, color it in a little. Maybe you have space up top, you want to add clouds or birds. Maybe I'll put a little clump of trees off in the distance here. Again, that might be one of those things that I can't really have control over how someone's going to interpret it. If someone else looks at it, maybe they think that's a bunch of people or a bush. Doesn't matter. I'll put a little bird back there too. I think I'll fill in my tree space with just some lines. This is a pen and ink style of shading by just doing some crosshatchy lines to fill that in. All right, I hope that your tree turned out looking cool. I only have a couple of spaces left here, and I think I'd like to show you how to do this scale pattern. I think it's a really pretty way to fill in, again, any odd shaped spaces. So if you would like to do this with me, choose a space to do it in and find the corner. So for me, I'm going to do it in this circle, and here's my corner. So any space you have, there should be some crossover that makes a bit of a corner area. So start by doing one scale, which is just a little half circle or a U if you want to look at it that way. And scales, if you look at them on an animal, never stack up directly like this. They're offset like bricks. So draw a little line in the middle of your scale, and that's going to show you where the next scale goes off. That way, and one this way. Again, draw your little lines, take one off in this direction, one goes here, one goes here. Add your lines. Eventually, if you keep doing it, if you have a large enough space, you won't have to add the lines anymore because you just know where that next scale is going to fall. So from here, this is fairly boring still, really. We want to find some way to fill in that space. Maybe this is the time that you want to try the ombre in the background, starting out dark, going lighter. Maybe you want to add little lines for like a texture detail. I think I'm actually going to do a little gradient in each one of the scales. Just kind of imagining that the scales above it cast a shadow down in that corner crevice and filling it in that way. However you want to do it, I'm sure it's going to look very cool. So while you're working on this one, check in with how you're feeling. Are you feeling relaxed? Do you feel you have de-stressed? Do you feel like you're putting a lot of expectation on your own artwork? And if so, do you think you could let it go? Alrighty, so I have one big funny shaped space left. If you are inspired by any of these shapes in here, I've got leaf, like an almond shape could be turned into a ton of things. We've got a cylinder, those turn into marshmallows. Zigzags are a fun element that you can turn things into. We've got hearts, you can do a little wave pattern. Just straight lines. These straight lines were turned into pencils. You'll notice that all of these have this brick pattern. I'm going to show you how to do that one because I think it's a fun way to take up space. But if you're inspired by anything else that you see that we haven't done, go for it. Do whatever you want. If you'd like to do bricks with me, choose a space and add a bunch of parallel lines. They could be diagonal, horizontal, vertical, however you want them. I think it's going to be most interesting for mine being diagonal. These are our rows of bricks going this way. So choose the longest row that you have, I guess mine's probably this one here, and go in and add vertical or lines going the other direction to make your rectangles for one row of bricks. That is where we start. From there, find the middle of that rectangle and go down your next line. And just keep doing that as you go, and it will create a brick wall. So I go up above there, find the middle. Sometimes we have to use, an estimation of where it would land if we run out of the border there. Mine, see, I kind of like ended up with a couple smushed together up under there. That doesn't matter. Just go with it. Let's do a few more belly breaths as we're getting close to being done. In through your nose. Out through your mouth. I'm going to do a couple more while I do some shading. Awesome. I know for me, I'm definitely feeling more relaxed than when I started. And a little cooled off too. I was feeling a little hot sitting under these lights, maybe feeling a little nervous about recording these classes. And doing all that deep breathing and talking it out with you has made me feel much more calm. This is an excellent tool. The belly breathing is an excellent tool to use anywhere, in any situation. If you're feeling overwhelmed, uncomfortable, you just want to calm down a bit, make use of that tool. I bet you've got lots of tools in your toolbox and that's just one more. So if you did do a brick wall and you think, oh, it's cool, but it's kind of boring. This is kind of a big space I filled in with bricks. There's not a lot of detail. So if you can think of something that you'd like to add onto it, maybe do that. Maybe I'll go in and do some little creepy vines and put some leaves on there with a really dark value because we've got to make it dark enough to see on top of everything else we've already done. And as you get to a point that you're feeling finished, is it because you are ready to move on, or is it because you think, oh, I ran out of space? If you think you ran out of space, but you'd like to keep going, take a look and see where you could add detail, maybe texture, maybe shading. For me, I think I could stand to add more in this white space behind my tree. I think I could add maybe some salsa over on my Dorito section. So you can keep going for a long time, actually. And this is also something you could do with like the tiniest piece of paper or in the margin of something else you're working on. It's been proven that doodling can help focus depending on your learning style. It might be something that you can employ while you study. All right. So my paper feels pretty filled up. It's time for me to leave you. So whatever you ended up with, I hope that you are proud of at least some aspect of it. Finding pride in what we do can be great for our self-confidence and our stress levels. And even if it's just like the tiniest piece, maybe you say, oh, I like the shading that I did on my squares. That's awesome. I hope that you can find something in there to be proud of. And I hope that by the end of this class, you're feeling nice and centered and ready to go on about your day with a little less stress being carried in your body. So to say bye, let's do one last belly breath all together in through your nose. Thank you so much. See you next time.